Welcome to the Feral Minds Podcast. You are right where you need to be, and we are glad you're here. Come seek with us as we laugh at what we have known and find direction from what our curiosities demand we learn.
All right. Talking about my generation. Today, we've got another guest back. Our favorite guest. What makes him our favorite guest? Well, because he said yes and came back.
Keep showing up.
Tyler Brisco is with us.
There's a sucker born every minute, guys.
Thank
I don't know
God.
what to tell you.
We needed one.
2 or 3
Sorry.
going on right now.
Yeah, sorry.
No, I liked it, man. Whenever you left out, you were a guest that after leaving, you were enthusiastic about. Like you could tell right
Yeah, it
away.
was
It's like,
awesome.
this is fun.
It was
I
a
want
really
to come
neat
back.
experience. Yeah, it's cool.
And we've had a couple other guests say that, but they haven't made it back. So I appreciate it. It's good to have you here.
Yeah, I'm just proud to be here, man. Thank you guys for having me. Sorry to all the podcasters. It's the best they can do. Hopefully they'll get better.
Man,
trying.
we're bringing people to the world they didn't know they wanted to know.
Yeah, we have a real fun word around that. What was the phrase? With all the people you never knew you needed to know.
Exactly.
Yeah, and you're number 1 or 2.
Yeah, it's
or
like top of the
something.
list.
Hey,
Yeah,
as long
sure.
as I'm a number, man.
We'll
I
get you a
don't care.
jersey at some point.
As long as
in
I'm
time.
a number.
Yeah.
So, man, what we came in today, I'm excited about this topic. It's something I've kind of been swimming around with a little bit. You could look at it different ways. You know, maybe you're talking differences in generations or generation gaps. You could look at it as like you're dealing with experience versus youth. You know, we all get so excited about looking young, feeling young, or being old and wise.
Get excited. We pay for it.
Right.
We'll buy youth
Yeah.
any way we can.
Several ways.
So once you get old enough to realize how great youth is, like it's gone from you.
Yeah.
It's a funny conundrum that we do, and I mean that's just part of life and the growth process. But some of the things like from youth, you got to hold on to. You know, the things that we've let go too much of. Some of that we believe in at Feral Minds. Maybe like you think recess needs to be a part of even an adult life, movement, exploration.
Yeah, we've come full circle.
Heck, even nap time.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
some of this stuff. you go
Snack
back-
time's
I
good
promise
as well.
you, at my age, I have came full circle. I'm ready for my nap. Not too much recess because I can't handle it, man.
Well, the more recess you get, the better you get at
I like my
recess.
snack time though too.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun.
But the other one that kind of we brought in with the show today is this idea of show and tell. And man, we appreciate you bringing in some exciting piece of hardware.
Yeah, so I brought a couple different things. One, I brought a little gift for you guys. Any show called The Feral Minds has got to have some feral shit. Yeah. So got
Just
your
looking feral.
little feral raccoon skull here. To
He's chromed out,
Go
too.
in your collection.
He's chromed
Absolutely.
It's
out.
a chromed
Yeah.
out raccoon skull.
Well, you guys deserve the bling, man. I mean, really.
I
So-
never knew one that a raccoon looked so aggressive. What are these, your trash pandas? That's what we were calling them?
Trash can panda
Trash
is
can
my
pandas.
favorite term for a raccoon.
They kind of look cool, de-skinned. It's almost a better alien look.
You know,
than
chromed
with
out.
gear
Yeah, I
on
can
'em.
see that landing in a spaceship,
Yeah.
man.
Oh, you blinged
Absolutely.
it out, too.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah, it
That
does look like a
skull-
little predator skull.
Regular
like a little baby
generic skull.
predator
Dude,
skull
if that
waiting to
thing
grow
had
up.
the rest of the skeleton blinged out, him and Sasquatch would be neck and neck. I mean, they're right there. Right?
We were
I don't know
talking
who's
the other
going to
day.
win, but it's going to be interesting.
We really glazed over the fact that we think Bigfoot might actually be rural homeless population.
Yeah, I thought that was an exciting
So
thing that
we
came
go
from the
back to
last show.
we go back to your story,
Yeah.
right? And a little bit of my story, the fact that some people are out there walking about, it made us wonder, like all this stuff that's knocking around in the woods, just homeless population trying to live. Is that
Man,
possible?
I don't know. There's a lot of I don't know in this world.
And then the question is, if we did find Sasquatch to be homeless, well, now we have to find him a home.
Yeah, you can't just let the homeless go.
Get him in like a
unhoused.
Section 8 apartment, or get him taken care of.
You know what I thought about? Of course, you can get your what is it, your license to go hunt Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Now, here's my question. Theoretically, if you see one and you kill it, what kind of hell have you created for yourself in society now?
I can't
Because
imagine.
you killed the only one
The
that we know
assumption,
of.
but all right. So the
That'd be like
assumption is you're
rolling in
going
with
to kill
the
it.
Easter Bunny. Strung
what's
up,
gonna
so
happen,
Just
dude?
killed some magnificent mythical figure. That
Well,
all
you're not gonna trap it.
I wouldn't
I mean,
hesitate,
you're not going to
though. I'd
trap
pull
it.
the trigger. It wouldn't bother me because that's
Yeah.
that's my,
if it comes down to me or
that's my
Bigfoot,
nature. I'm
Bigfoot's going down.
Man, I'm mounting that thing right above my fireplace.
I don't know what
That's
the other
gonna be
options,
awesome.
but what are the options? Like, you're going to show up against Bigfoot and go, "Hey, just come with me peacefully." It's 9 foot of just curly poodle hair.
Well, we don't know how tall it is. All the pictures
You
have
got to
been from
kill
a
it. Though.
distance.
You got to kill it.
It's a tough goal.
You got to kill it. Like, you can't take a chance. You're saying Bigfoot. You're out on one of these big. Well, first of all, these Bigfoot.
Dude,
Have you not
offer him a
seen Harry and
Slim
the
Jim.
Hendersons?
Give him a Slim Jim.
Bigfoot is he's misunderstood. He's
him
not
one.
outside.
Misunderstood. Okay. All right. Well, anyway,
He's misunderstood. He's unfounded. We don't even know if we.
He could be a genius.
he
Maybe
and I,
that's
he
why
and
he
I
doesn't
are
have to deal with
doing.
people.
Trace and I are doing a homeless audit with a local organization.
Okay.
Here in next week, actually.
Coming
Going
up
out
fast.
4 a.m. This hit me at about I don't know, a couple of days last week. This hit me. I'm driving home in the dark, going, "We're gonna go out at 4 a.m. and knock on tents. You can't really knock on a tent. You scratch on a tent to take inventory to help this homeless agency." Now, I'm not saying this totally in humor, but that's a scary thought.
Yeah. Are you
You're
guys
dude, we're going out 4 o'clock in the
Are
morning.
you taking some self-defense stuff?
We're
with
going
you?
out with professionals.
I don't know if
That's the
what sort
extent
of
of what I
self-defense.
know.
I gotta go armed with good karma. Is the way I go through life. I truly, I kind of am one of those believers. There's nothing to be afraid of. Don't worry about locking your
Man,
doors.
I don't know. Those I think
It's a dumb mentality. I understand. I'm not trying to defend it, but I'm going out without.
You're living
I'm
Zen
going
life.
out with no defense.
You're just
I'm not
riding on
worried
pure
about it.
karma.
Yeah, I believe that just through the goodwill that I'm there with, that it's not going to have any negative aspect that can come on the other side of it.
Here's what I
don't know.
I've learned
about
this
that.
from talking my
Have
way
you
out of
watched
some
that
fights
grizzly
before.
dude that was like trying to be friends with the bears?
Oh, yeah, I did.
The very
Who's in
last
that?
video, and he had good karma all the way up through the back of the bear.
Hey, at some point you got to stop testing your karma. I will say that.
I mean, I think that guy, that was in the cards the whole time. He was out there really trying to dance with him.
He wasn't going
Yeah,
to
I
leave
agree.
until.
But I mean, that's a
Until
wild
something
animal. To some extent, you're dealing with some feral people out here that are living in Tent
possible.
City, man. You need to be careful. Seriously,
That
Well,
is true.
here's what
They're undomesticated. They're unhoused.
they're surviving.
That's a
with-
little bit of what I thought
with nothing. Yeah.
when we were starting to go out there. Is we're feral minds. We owe it to some of the feral living to find out about it. One of the things that I've wanted to go on and do this, and then it's even in my experiences in the past. I've sat down with one, outside, kind of chatted for a while. I say one, like
One
that
of
just
their
seems like
kind.
they're different. I know it's so
Well, the way
but
we're-
a
but the
person
way
didn't
we're
have a home,
talking
and I was
about it-
curious. I was like, one of these days I might want to live feral like this. Here I am. I'm a feral mind. What happens if I do want to just break the bounds of
Voluntarily
living in a
homeless.
home? There's a freedom to it that I think could still be explored and embraced. I mean, Janis Joplin said it pretty well. Freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose. And this is where these people are at. If they're living Janis Joplin life, they're the free ones.
I like my freedom with a shower and with
Yeah.
HVAC and a nice set of clean clothing. But anyway, so we're going out to do inventory and learn a little bit about the process. I'm really curious about it, but I also get a little scared about it when I think about how creepy it's going to be. My defense is these bad boys right here.
Oh, okay.
I still got a good 40, 50 yards in me where I'm good.
We're gonna
you
outpace them.
get to 100 yards, I'm in trouble.
You don't
I'm
have
in
to-
deep
You throw
water.
some adrenaline in there. I bet you're good for 100.
I'm saying I'll give myself 100 yards, but then I need a motorized vehicle to get me the rest of the way.
You just have to
out.
outrun the rest of the team.
That's
man.
a good point.
Yeah.
The other one, you don't
That's a
got to
good
be
point.
faster than the bear.
Yeah.
Just
Helps
faster than
with the
everybody
trip
else.
the dude next to you. That's always easy.
Well, unforeseen circumstances excluded. I do think that it's going to be an eye-opening event.
It will definitely be interesting.
I don't
Yes,
know if we're going
I
to
would
find the
agree.
one that says, "Yep, I'm Sasquatch." But if I did have to find Sasquatch out in the
We'll let
open,
you know, though.
I'd rather wake him up in his home than see him out on the
I
prowl.
think you're going
man.
to find some very close ones.
You would have like at least 3 foot of leg just hanging out the tent. You'd have some idea if Squatch is the one you're out there to audit.
You see one of those like 20-man tents set up. You're like, how many people
Wow,
are
they
there?
daisy chained that set
Just
up.
one. It's just Sasquatch in the big
It's a
one.
long single wide hallway of tent.
No, I get it. I don't think we're going to end up there. And I truly, I'm with you. I appreciate creature comforts. I'd like to think that what I've done, what I've learned and experienced through life so far is going to keep me in the level of comfort that I've come to know. But I tell you, my youth, to get to this point, you weren't any guarantee that I wasn't going to end up in that same place. You know, there's a lot of lessons that have to be learned, some of them the hard way, especially for me. You know, I'm an experiential learner. You can tell me all you want that this is going to happen or this won't, and until I jump in the mix, I don't believe you.
Yeah, I'm very similar.
Like, so to go back, I was in school.
Is it you don't
Whenever
believe
they
it?
first taught us how to use those crank pencil sharpeners, and they tell you, don't stick your finger in there. Put your pencil in there and turn.
Yeah.
My first thought was, whatever, I'm going to find out. I go up to that pencil sharpener, twist it around with the biggest one, stick my pinky in it, and turn. And it cut.
Lesson learned.
I cranked it. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Yeah. Yep. And honestly, I kind of, vaguely remember pulling it out and being like, yep, it happened. All right. I just had to find
The
out.
evidence of all the pencils coming out sharp weren't enough. You needed to bleed out that example?
Well, who knows? Maybe they were tickling those pencil sharpeners or pencils.
You just want to know how it worked.
I didn't know. Yeah.
I've always found
I
learning,
know
like-
more intimately than most people how that spiral blade sharpens a pencil, and that's just the way I had to dive in to learn. That's
I always
on
thought
that.
learning didn't have the same sting until it meant something, right? Even if I'm just learning a flat one-dimensional subject, I needed it to have a little bit of sting in my pants for me to really
Grasp
pay
it.
attention to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so if you're training me on something but I have no experience around it, I'm almost going to let it out the back door, right? It just doesn't mean anything to
It's
me.
not pertinent to me yet.
No.
I don't
Yeah.
even. I haven't experienced.
It's gotta
not
have a
what
little
my
sting.
hands are touching.
It's got to have a little sting. And I don't think that's entirely in an inappropriate way to learn. I think it is you're going to learn in a little bit more violent fashion. But I also think you're going to learn all the way through the lesson, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you know how it's done and you know how you did it and you know the gaps in between, now you really have a learning opportunity
Well, you're-
versus just reading a subject matter.
You're definitely going to retain it better. I mean, if you have some of those,
When you got the scars to show.
when you've got those hiccups and you know what the end result should be,
Yeah.
and you're going to take a different route to get there, it's going to hurt for a little while. You're going to get there, and the next time you're going to go, man, maybe I should have went that other route that they told me because
There's-
that's a lot less painful.
Yeah, and now there's value in paying attention. Whereas
Yeah.
before it was like, you're telling me this for some reason I don't quite understand yet until I understand what that sting's going to
But
be.
I'm absolutely guilty of being one of those guys that, and I have nothing against authority. It's not like an authority problem. But when somebody tells me this is how we're doing it, I automatically question that a little bit. Like, well, why aren't we doing it this way?
Yeah.
I may not say it out loud, but in my mind, I'm going, well, there might be a better way. Maybe we should try this. I got in trouble really early in my career. Why? I was doing some time and doing some other things, and I went to this. She was like the AA for this.
By doing
leadership.
time, for the rest of the world that doesn't know this, you weren't behind bars.
No, yeah,
Yeah, this
So
is a labor
I'm like
issue.
literally doing time where they can charge it out and I can get paid and the customer can get charged and all that. Anyways, I go to this AA and I'm like, hey, she'd got me in on something. It was something to do with the time, and it was like how we entered it or how we charged it. I'm like, this makes absolutely no sense. It's not good for the customer. It's not good for me. It's not good for the company. I'm spending way too much time doing this time over the course of a year. Tremendous amount of waste of resources for everybody. And she looks at me. She's like, you need to go with the flow. And I'm like, what? She goes, don't fight the system. Just go with the system.
Yeah.
And I have never forgot that because she was absolutely right. There's
Yeah.
sometimes don't try to swim upstream. Just put your arms out, float downstream.
Yeah.
There's a yin and a yang to that, though. Like, it's a good and bad. Because, I loved how you started off that. It got me on fire. I was like, heck yeah, feral thinking, break it out. But then the moral of your story is just stay in the lane.
Not in all cases. I think it's good to question things, especially processes. Somebody may have put that process together, whatever it is, years ago or in a different aspect or whatever, and things change daily. So there's absolutely well-defined rights to question why we're doing this or why am I doing this? Why am I thinking this way? I think that's healthy, but you got to be careful with it too because you can get yourself in a trap that may have bad consequences on the other side.
I've always thought that when you get an organization and you see things that aren't really logical, there's usually a system issue behind it, When you go, why do we do it this way? The answer is usually because the system requires us to do it this way. So we'll deny all kinds of logic as long as what we're doing can be captured appropriately in software. We'll alter the effectiveness, the logic of what's actually being done in the physical world in order for it to fit the insanity of a limit of a program.
I've noticed, too, a lot of that when we question things, again, whether it's in an industry or whatever, sometimes we're questioning that because we don't have enough information for that topic, right? Why am I doing it like this? Well, we're doing it like this because yada, 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 yada. Oh, okay, well, that makes sense now. But if you didn't have that information, then how do you know that that's the right way? You don't.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Your ignorance or I guess a lack of knowledge can lead to a virility.
Absolutely.
And but again, back to trying to put a positive light on that, I feel like you carry around too much knowledge, well, you aren't going to have anything figured out.
I agree, but I think information, too, helps you make good decisions. Without that information, you can make decisions maybe for somebody else's career, maybe for your own family.
Off an assumption,
off an
some
assumption,
prior experience.
because you didn't have that information.
Yeah.
And that whether it's a yes or a no may have totally changed that decision.
Yeah.
So it has extreme consequences if you don't have a little bit of that, why am I doing this in you?
Well, think of how much further we could progress if maybe a few of these feral minds, like again, the one I'm shining a light on, would just stay in the lane. Like, we already learned that step of whatever. We don't need to backtrack just so you're dumb can learn it again.
Man, I
that
promise
we could
you,
just start here and launch to new problems.
I would be far better in life if I would have just kept my mouth shut several times about several things. But I'm inquisitive and I like to know, so here I sit, a dumbass with 3 steel plates in my head, all kinds of other battle scars.
3 steel plates in your head.
Financially, mentally, and physically.
Why didn't you go for the 4th? Well, you just 3 was a good
three's all I
balance.
needed. That's all it takes.
I got to ask.
Lesson learned. Right there.
I'm sorry. The only other person I've heard talk about a plate in their head was cousin Eddie on vacation. So I got to know, whenever you fire up the microwave, do you piss yourself and forget who you are for
Dude,
about
you
15
joke about that. And I don't think the doctors, they'll argue this, but like right after the surgery, if I got close to one that was on, I could feel like a tingling. I swear. And I don't know if it was psychological or physical or what.
No, when you start putting metal in your skull, I agree with you. Now, because I've got them in your teeth. Like, if you haven't felt the tinfoil chew against one of those old
this is your grill or what?
No, fillings, crowns,
Oh, I thought
root
maybe you had a
canals.
little
Nah,
gold in the grill.
I got a lot of work in here. It's an expensive mouth that just looks like a normal one. But it would surprise you how much you feel that more just having a gold cap on your tooth. Like, your skull is sensitive. So I don't doubt one bit having some metal as part of your skull is going to happen.
Yeah, and it was only like immediately after that, like during the healing process and everything else. Today, I don't even think about it. Most of the time, I completely forget about it.
What, and exactly how did it happen?
This is a long story I'll try to condense. So at that time, I was very young, probably in my mid-20s, I guess, just working like crazy hours. And to try to make some extra money, I thought I was going to be a horse whisperer, for lack of a better word. Worst decision I've ever made.
But your job at this point in time was to break them?
Yeah, so I was doing I worked 6 days a week, and then like on my day off, I would go try to break these horses and condition them and do some things like that. And I'll be the first to tell you, I don't get along with horses. Like cattle, other animals, I've got a pretty good feel with. My dad, my grandparents, and my sister, they're the legit horse whisperer. Man, they can do amazing things. I've never got along with them. Probably goes to some of that questioning. Why are you doing this? I'm in control. And then they go, no, I'm in control. And then we don't get along.
Yeah, let's check the weight card here.
That just doesn't work. So anyways, back to the story. I was doing that, and this was on Easter Sunday. I remember that part of it. We had them snubbed up. I was on a horse. Another guy was on a horse.
Snubbed up means what?
So they're basically, if you've got a horse that you're breaking, you've got his halter and his nose is tied off to the saddle horn of this other horse.
Okay.
And you're leading them through because you're fixing to go out into a pasture, and he's fixing to let you loose.
But yeah, so you got to.
Once he does that other horse is going to try to take off.
Whenever he lets that loose, you're in control or he's in control. It's up to you two to figure it out.
All right.
So anyways, we're snubbed up. We get to the gate, and then I don't know how much time passed. I wake up in it was my brother-in-law's truck at the time, and I was in the passenger seat, and I didn't have a shirt on. It was on my head. And I just kind of wake up. And I mean, I'm kind of coming to, and he's screaming, and I'm like, what in the world is going on? And I pull my shirt. I'm like, where's my shirt? And I pull it off, and it's obviously covered in blood.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God. So I pull the mirror down. He's don't move. And I'm looking, there's blood all in his truck. I'm like, I'm getting your truck all bloody. I pull the mirror down, and there's like a big hole here.
Whoa.
And,
It's funny the things you worry about when you're about to die.
and it never hurt. At that time, it never hurt. I guess you go
You're
into
numb,
some
huh?
sort of, your body goes into shock or whatever.
But you literally had a hole in your head.
Yeah, it broke all these bones right here in your skull. The frontal lobe, I think is what they call that.
Okay.
Maybe that's the brain part. I don't know. Well, anyways, we get to the hospital, and I'll make this quick, but this is funny. You guys like that. We get to the hospital emergency room, and they're filling out the paperwork, and I'm sitting over here on the deal with literally holding my brains in. And there's a dude sitting next to me, and I'm kind of like waiting on whatever's next. You know,
Yeah.
I don't know at this point. I'm
I
not
need a
really
new
hurt, and
skull
I
cap.
hadn't figured out what's happening. I look over, and this dude's been shot like 3 times, and he's holding, and he looks at me, he goes, what happened to you? And I just pull my deal off. He goes, Jesus Christ, give this man a doctor. He's dying. I can see his brains. And that is
been shot 3
dude,
times is concerned about you.
that exact second's when I'm like, man, this is bad. That dude's been shot. This is not going to end well for me.
Y'all just sound like 2 Civil War soldiers
No,
staring
it
at
was
each other going like, are they going to fix you or
When
me?
One's got a leg cut off.
I was
There's missing
looking
an
at
arm.
him, and when I saw the look in his eye when I pulled that off,
Oh.
that's when it hit me like, dude, this is bad.
Yeah.
This is really bad.
That's that old classic joke. Like 2 people get damaged, right? And who's the one that has the largest reaction? Not the one that's damaged.
It's the other
one
guy.
that sees the
Yeah.
one that's damaged and goes like, oh my God, I must be in a similar setup.
Yeah.
So they take you back and what? They jam some gauze in
No,
there?
we were at a local hospital, and they're like, yeah, there's nothing we can do with this guy. So they put me, and I'll never forget this part. Again, I hadn't been hurting at all. I'm just holding my
rolling
head.
around with a hole in
Yeah.
your head like it's nothing.
They put me on a backboard, and for those of you that have never been on one, that is hands down the most excruciating thing I've ever had to do.
Really?
They strapped me. They wanted me motionless, so they put the neck thing on, and they band me to this backboard and throw me in an ambulance for a 2-hour drive to the
Oh my
nearest
God.
hospital. Man, about
They
30
put
minutes.
a towel in your mouth?
About 30 minutes down the road, I'm like screaming at the driver's in there, and I'm like, man, you gotta let my legs and my back you're killing me.
So the pain is just being held static
Just
like that.
held static to a flat
Feeling
board.
everything probably in the
Oh,
road.
It was terrible.
And there's
Wow.
not great suspension on those.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they
So-
finally they let my legs let my legs loose where I could kind of arch them a little bit.
It just
Such
made all the
relief.
difference.
Yeah.
Wow. So they take you to a civilized hospital.
Yeah,
One-
so they
one with
take us to a
professional doctors? or-
yeah. This guy was like I was trying to remember his name. I can't believe I can't remember it because he was so awesome.
I can believe you can't remember.
He was an ear, nose, and throat doctor. Strangely enough, because
Okay.
I guess you got all these sinus cavities and stuff up there. I
not a
don't know.
neurologist.
Well, they had a guy check that out. I guess I got billed for it, so I'm sure they had
Somebody
somebody
came by.
somewhere check that out. But he came in. He's like, "There's nothing we can do till we get the swelling down. So we're gonna stitch you up and send you home with some pain meds, and I'll see you in about 6 weeks."
Wow.
And I'm like, "Can I go back to work? Because we're hungry and I'm broke." And I'll never forget this. All my friends were in there, and they told me this later. I say I can't forget it because they told me later. But at this point, they've got me on a really heavy morphine drip. And I mean, I've never done any drugs to speak of. And when that nurse put that in, I knew as soon as the needle went in, I knew I felt good. And I'm like, "What's that?" She goes, "Morphine." I'm like, "Can you turn that up?" She says, "Yeah." And I mean, it puts you in a different place. I can see where people can have a problem with the morphine deal.
It's good, huh?
Anyways, doctor comes in. He's like, "Yeah, 6 weeks, whatever." I'm like, "Well, can I go back to work?" He's like, "What do you do?" And I'm like, I couldn't remember what I did. So I'm like, I play professional hockey. You know, and I've got my head busted. And
That's
all
what you
this.
came up
Goes
with.
with
Yeah,
the
I
headwound.
remember.
It just come out of nowhere. And he's like,
I'm going to call him a hockey
yeah,
player.
I don't know what you do, but you're not going to do that. And you're not going to go back to work either. So
I got a question. So I guess it's safe to say you didn't get back on that horse, huh?
no.
Yeah, I got in trouble for that once. The only time I got bucked off. I was a lot younger, but I felt the need to get back on the horse was not near as strong as my father felt like it was.
That was truly a
It's like I felt like
deal.
I had learned from that experience.
Life-changing experience for me.
Was that the first time you've been bucked?
No, I'd done that a lot, but it kind of helped me reevaluate my life and my career because I'm like, all right, well, now I'm out of work for this 6 weeks, and then we got the surgery, and I'm out of work for that much more. Well, you're only getting a certain percentage of your short-term disability, and we were barely making it when I was working 80 hours a week. So I'm like, what am I doing trying to make $500 a month? I've just jeopardized my entire career, my health, and quite frankly, our financial stability because it was tough.
Wow.
Totally rearranged my thought process from that day forward.
That part-time job got expensive.
Yeah, well, I mean, you really, again, you rearrange. You're like, what am I doing over here? I can't believe I was doing that.
Yeah.
So that's your experience breaking you out of a youthful existence that you were making kind of inexperienced, ignorant decisions
and again,
on.
like yourself, the only way I learn is through pain and gain, man.
Oh, God. Man, I'll tell you something I want to like I said, we're talking about generations. And you hear a lot of talk about this younger generation coming up, and they're not going to be as good. Just like the baby boomers said about Gen X, I'm sure every generation down through the lineage of generations probably said the next one coming up.
These kids these days.
Yeah. Now I got to say though, on this experiential learning side, I was very proud of my son. You find out about them a whole lot once they turn 16. Like their choice ability shoots through the roof. And I can tell you, have you got yours up to 16 yet?
No, I don't.
Man, it's one of those things like they'll tell you they grow up fast, but you don't have any idea how fast it feels until you see them doing it.
I can imagine.
And I can tell you the same thing, man. When they turn 16, there's this whole switch that's a different existence. You don't even have the same kid anymore.
Man,
but you find out about the when I saw mine turn 16, I felt like Forrest Gump. At the end, when he comes in and he finds out that he's got a child, and he's sitting down and he looks at her and he goes, "Is he smart?" And he finds out that he was. I have that same feeling with my child because I've seen him grow up to this point. I've seen that decision switch of a 16-year-old flick on, and he is smarter than I was. He doesn't have to learn
That is awesome.
through the experience of slamming his head into a wall to find out, I'm not going to slam my head into a wall.
Hey, congratulations, man.
You evolved them.
That comes from you.
so.
You took the gene line forward.
I like to think so. I think that it's each generation's
He's acting,
job
but you're acting
to
like-
make the next generation better. Yeah. So it's tough to sit here and say that they're not as good.
So at 16, what you're saying is you're happy with the work that you put into your child.
I've gotten in trouble because I've said I'm done. Like honestly, I saw you. I was like, I think he's already smarter than me.
Say it out loud.
He already got life figured out before I did. So I'm gonna let him just ride on with it.
That decision-making part you're talking about, that was because of the way you and your wife and your family influenced him up to that point. Now, there's going to be a lot more of that later in life, but when you get
credit, but I don't know how I
get to
did
that point, a lot of that comes directly from how you were raised, in my opinion. I mean, I had the same experience. I've got a picture. You guys told me to bring some stuff that was important.
Yeah, show us up.
So this is my family, obviously, and this is a little bit dated, but it's myself and my wife and my son and my daughter. And
you don't have too many more gray hairs. It ain't that bad.
Yeah, my son is 11 now. My daughter's 7, and we're at the perfect. I would think, with my experience, the perfect time. We still get to do a lot of things. Their grandparents are still in good health, so
they're still interested in.
Yeah, we're having
Hang on
all three of the generations are still
fun.
vital and contributing and mixing together.
I worry sometimes about influencers, if you will. That's become a really big thing in this world today, good and bad. I think some of them do have the right intent, but there's a lot of them out there that I think are just doing it for the fame and the money, and they really don't offer anything. I think society in general has a curiosity about the rich and famous, but realistically, they're living in a totally different world than we are. So their decision making, kind of going back to that information deal, totally different day to day. And I don't worry about my son and my daughter. I don't worry about them making poor decisions in the future. I worry about the future of everybody else's decisions, if you will. The area that they're going to be living in concerns me a little bit.
So what went wrong with that then? So do we blame the generation before for not leaving it better? Or do we blame this? Because right now, the way I see it, you pretty much got 3 generations at any given time, roughly.
Yeah,
I mean, they overlap some. Like the baby boomers overlapped a couple. I don't know however big they are. But at any given time, you basically got 3 generations. And right now, you got baby boomers, and then you got us, your Gen X, and your 40s, 50s, and then millennials. And I think they might even starting one behind the millennials now. I think that it's almost been too long. We're in a 25-year window with them or something.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, between those 3, if the world's getting worse, who's to blame?
Yeah, that's such a complex question. And I was actually talking to a close friend of mine. He's exactly 10 years older than I am. And we share very similar interests. We're in the same field. We do a lot of things. And I'll go on the record and tell you, when I met him 20 years ago, I hated him. I thought he's the most arrogant SOB I'd ever met in my entire life.
That's good.
Yeah, he had an engineer degree and a very intelligent guy, obviously. And I came to him, and this is a different deal, but I want to tell this story. I came to him with a question about a machine that he had actually been an engineer on. So he knows that product very well. And I'm just an entry-level technician at this point. And I'm like, hey, man, I'm having this problem, and the book doesn't tell me what's going on. There's a lot of things that come with experience in my industry, right? The book gives you a lot of information, but there's some things you just have to know from experience. So I reach out to him, and as far as I know, I'd never offended this guy in any shape, form, or fashion. I'm like, hey, man, I'm having this problem. You got any insight? What would you do next? And I kind of tell him about it. And I'll never forget, he's working on his desk. He goes, yeah, hold on just a second. Gets a piece of paper. And he draws a graph. And he's like, this is X point and over here. And he hands me the graph. He goes, that's all you need to know.
What did he give you?
It's
Quadratic formula?
Yeah.
What did that teach
For
you?
a 20-year-old kid that has zero experience with any of that.
And what was your next move?
I just said, okay, thank you. And I politely walked out. And
It's like I'm not going to need to do much.
No, that's what I was like, okay, I'll figure it out myself.
Yeah, for the next couple of years, I tried to avoid the guy like the plague. But then we got to kind of interacting a little bit more, and he's got a really dry sense of humor. So that may have been what that was at that time.
Oh, you missed his punchline.
And I just missed it because I've never been around that. I wasn't raised in that kind of atmosphere with that high intellect, really dry type of sense of humor. Yeah. And I'm like, man, my kids are spoiled rotten. And he's like, yeah, mine are too. And that kind of gets us to engaging in some more conversation, some of this feral mind kind of stuff, if you will. We have a lot of these conversations. And I'm like, man, have you ever wondered, like, every generation spoils their children a little bit because they want more for them. Is that taken away from our society to some extent? Because then that generation expects more out of the world because they were gave more to start with. And, I don't know. That's that's probably not a new thought. I'm sure there's other people that explored that. It just popped into my
I go both sides.
Struggling head.
I don't think it's yours. I don't think it's yours. It's not. We are doing the best we can with the environment we have. But whether or not we're at war, whether or not we're in famine, whether or not these are largely out of a parent's control. And so, we can spoil them in the way we discipline them, don't discipline them, the way we teach them to strive. But so much of what we're doing is making do with the current we have, right? We're living at a very comfortable time. And you and I can't change that, right? You can make your kid's life very uncomfortable in a way that will eventually have them resenting you. But you can't create World War II for them or some large, learning curve that they have to step through.
It can't be artificial. The conflict you learn from has to be genuine. It can't be manufactured conflict.
How do you raise resilient, robust children in a very soft time?
Yeah.
When their life doesn't give them much challenge, and it kind of becomes one of your challenges as a parent to create the challenge for them
without going too far.
Yeah, without making them hate you, because the rest of the world is living a very comfortable life.
My children, I mean, they know what work is, and they know what ethics are, and some of those things, and some of those lessons have been tough for them. And I mean, I've had to do some things that I don't know that I enjoyed doing as a parent, but I knew that hopefully that would imprint on them later on from ethics and integrity standpoint. Lying is a big deal for me in my family. I've got this thing, and everybody's entitled to their own thoughts and beliefs and all that. But I've kind of got this. I don't know if it's a motto or it's just a belief, I guess. And I didn't realize this until later in life because the area we live in, right? But so in my late 20s and 30s, as I was transitioning through my career and doing some things, I discovered that a grown man will look you straight in the eye and shake your hand and tell you a lie.
They can do it.
They will absolutely tell you a grown person, grown woman, grown man, absolutely can happen. And I guess I didn't understand that until later
you
on.
probably weren't around adults that lied.
But again,
you didn't have
it's
that
all
experience.
where I was at in life and my influencers when I was younger. I thought that was just something you'd see on TV or thieves did. So where I'm going with that is my belief is if a grown person, man or woman, will tell you a lie, they'll steal from you. And they have the ability to hurt you and hurt your family. And I have zero tolerance for that. If I suspect that's going on, I make sure that it's a solid belief, and we distance ourselves from whoever or whatever that person is associated with.
Yeah, I think truth can get undervalued a little bit.
Absolutely.
And the importance of it as a foundation for all communication, all relationships, all partnerships. You can't teach that too much.
That's the cornerstone of everything.
Now, I wonder, though, when it comes to that person, was every bit of the responsibility of learning that lesson put on their parent? Was every bit of the responsibility for learning that lesson put on society or on the person? You know, that's where I say a lesson like how to interact with other humans, like the telling the truth and not stealing. Like there's a few parties involved there, and to an extent, they almost all have to line up to teach that person a lesson.
Sure.
Or it just doesn't happen.
Sure.
I think somebody has to, when you're talking about anything with theft or just unethical behavior, a model had to show you that. I think inherently.
You blame the parent?
I don't know that I blame anybody. What I say is there's circumstances, whether it's the parent or the environment or the individual itself. But somewhere along the way, I don't think we're born with a desire or an intuition to lie. I think we learn that at some now, whether it's my parent or whether it's at elementary school, I've learned that for some reason my desires can be either fulfilled or elongated if I tell lies when I need to tell them. And I we've all lied, and that's the tricky part, right? You kind of to be a person that's not concerned with the truth is to be a person that has not feel the sting of having to live in a lie. Because living in lies and carrying a lie around with you, and then you really have to, like, you go back to, you're a Quantum Leap fan, right? You remember Quantum Leap would always quadrate where they were. When you start telling a lie, you have to anchor back to that lie. And then you just realize this is entirely exhausting.
Oh, I can't imagine living
a very horrible way to live, but we've all done it at times. And I'd like to think of telling the truth at some point. It becomes a maturity issue, but it speaks to your intuition and just whatever moral fiber you have within you at some point in time gets tickled and says, yeah, this is a moment where I can bend the truth and I'll rationalize, right? The nature of the etymology of that word, right? I'm telling myself lies to justify what I'm doing. And I think circumstantially people find themselves in places where they make a decision. And that decision has a lie in it, and they believe that the lie is somehow the greater play in that handle, right? It leads to a greater truth for them.
I think
that's interesting. You say that
is maturity too, because I wanted to say I've done all those things.
I was going to say
at much younger age. I've absolutely done them, and there came a point in my life where either those things caught up with me, and I learned the hard lesson the hard way, or I just overlooked some things and came to a realization this is not who I am. It's not how I was raised, not how I want to be thought of, and matured out of that. And some of that's tough. I mean, we've all been in a position where it'd be so much easier to tell a lie than
you
tell
get
the
short-sighted with your lies.
Yeah.
Like that's what got me. And what it was something you said there that kind of sparked it was your 20s. Like that's whenever you start getting to that point where you can make big mistakes, big lessons learned. I came up into that with to have to learn this truth and integrity lesson a little bit, based off the numbers we were trying to make on production levels as I was a manager, and I had one or two employees. It was actually two. That I couldn't get to live up to the expectation I had for what I was paying them. and justified in my mind some way.
Not what you were paying them, what the organization was paying them, right?
Well,
that's where this stuff gets funny.
It does. Well,
because it's not even your money.
Let me defend why I say it that way. UPS, the place I worked at when I did it, was very adamant about telling you this is your little candy shop. This is your little part of the belt. You make your decisions and control this here. And so that's why, like, I had ownership. Like, I really felt like they were taking from me. Like, they did a great job of coordinating your
accountability.
You were thinking it was your own small business.
They were beautiful with accountability there. So that's just kind of one of it. And so under that, my need to stay in integrity and in truth was outweighed by my desire to try to make a name for my little inexperienced, youthful 20-something self. And in doing that, I would shave their time a little bit just to get my number right, to get, they were the worst ones. I know, like, as I'm telling you that, I realize.
Wait, so everybody understands what this means. They had worked 8 hours in a day.
We were part-time. So usually they work about 3.5, 3.75.
Whatever the number is.
And then if it didn't work out, you just kind of bump 3.15. You shave about 20, 30 here or there. And again, I can't tell you enough how I learned, like, it's awful. It didn't even help my numbers that much. It didn't make me feel like I was righting the situation.
Really the
that was
person.
Some of what I was trying to do was right my inability to make them better.
I know, but
like,
just
I could sit here and told you all the facets of the excuses.
You're not the scuzzy person today that you were that day when you made that decision.
Right. That's what I'm getting at.
Correct. All right.
And I'm embarrassed to tell it. Like, I really do feel.
No, it's not you.
It's a shame that I wear with pride, though, because I did learn that lesson. It did just pound into my head the importance of nothing but truth in your life, in your expression of your existence.
Transparency.
It is, yeah. You could look at it all the ways you want. I could have been told that all the ways. To an extent, I knew it, even in my 20s. But it speaks to the point you were saying. At some point, it'll come along, and you'll find the reason is big enough to do the deception. Some way or another, the teeter-totter will swing to where deception is the better option than my integrity. And then I learned in that moment that can't happen. You don't have integrity.
In that instance, though, so you're under pressure because you're putting yourself in that position, right? Not because the management was saying, hey, your numbers aren't good enough, you're going to have to do this. You were going, man, I've got to make these numbers better if I want to get to this level. So here's how I'm going to do it.
Oh, believe me, there's a healthy dose of both. Like, they'll come in and yell at you
You
for not
thought
making
the dude didn't deserve the time. That was your accusation, right?
That was one of the many facets that led me to think this will be okay.
Right.
Yeah, it was.
So the guy's agreeing to get paid hourly, and you're like, no, this is based on production. And he didn't know that, so he lost a little bit of time.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is a much more unethical, unenlightened individual, not the man here today.
Yes,
that's
exactly.
important to understand that.
There's a lot of lessons and experience that have built up from then to now to get me here.
Yeah.
And what I'm kind of saying is, is where we always will say the generation coming up ain't as good. Well, you're watching a generation stumbling, bumbling through their teens and 20s. Like, there's never going to be a generation that's born, it comes out, bam, they're in their 40s and they already have learned life lessons.
Sure.
We, I think, need to give a little bit of grace to that generation coming up and understand, hey, we went through those teens and 20s too. So there's an aspect of an older generation needing to learn some allowance, I think, and acceptance. And then there's a little bit still that you got to blame that generation coming up to give some respect to their elders, to have discernment in between what are structures and processes that need to stay in place or what are some that need to be broken and taken down.
But they also have, in that age, you're in the age when you're going to do things. You have the energy to do it. You have the personal ambition to do it. You are trying to become your own individual, right? And you're really worried with this vessel that you're driving that's going to be the provider for you and your family. And so we need people in those age groups, in that 20 to 40 bracket. We need you screwing up, right? It's important that you screw up because that's how you learn, and that's also how you take risks to advance whatever our society element you're working on. We need you taking risks. The dishonesty that comes with it, I always thought, man, I mean,
if you lie
about
an
outcome.
You're not learning the lesson.
But you're also worried about an outcome for yourself. So there's an individual self-preservation motivation there that says, all right, I'm going to tell this lie. So like with your example, right? So the guy didn't even know you were taking his time, right?
No. So the end of the story, he actually was very meticulous about keeping track of his time.
Turns out.
Yeah,
You're
and
messing
he
with my
came
money.
back to me later,
Yeah.
after the week the paycheck. He's
In
like,
the
man, I'm pretty
parking
sure. No. He was he was very
Standing on the
gracious.
hood of my car
Like, honestly,
with a crowbar.
It wouldn't have seemed that anybody would have done. He came to me and said, I think there's a mistake. And I saw, and I knew what it. I was like, all right, let me look
Mistake.
into it.
That
I'll
was
see what I can
design,
do.
homie.
So I got the time put back on. He told me how much he was missing. Then I had to lie and reverse it to where I'm shaving it up because I didn't want to go tell my boss that I'd stolen.
Oh, man.
Like, it was the tangled web.
It's the reason
we
why you don't
weave.
do it. Yeah.
The amount of web weaving
Yeah.
after my deceit. Honestly, from that point on, you don't have to worry about me. I am not going to deceive you in purpose or in any way,
Lesson
shape, or
learned
form
right
hide
there.
from my truth.
Yeah.
I like the fact the dude caught you.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So if he wouldn't have caught you,
I wouldn't have learned.
you don't have to face it.
You don't. You don't go into the shame. You don't have to look in the mirror at your lesson. And that kind of goes back to what I was saying before. You have to have, like, the parent, the person, and then situations that come from society to teach true lessons in life, or they aren't going to be learned in the same fashion.
I think environment too has a big effect on where that's coming from. Because I mean, you can have those right influencers and you can have the right thoughts, but man, if you're starving to death, I mean, if I'm starving to death, my family's starving, I'm going to do whatever it
A
takes.
whole lot of your morals go out the door when life is
I'm
in
going to
balance.
have some changes. Yeah, and I'm not doing it to be evil. I'm doing it to keep them alive or do whatever we've got to do to get to
Yeah.
that next place.
Yeah.
So
You weren't starving that day. No. Yeah. We don't.
No, I
we can
wasn't
almost
starving,
say,
man.
We can almost say, like, in this world, we're just trying not to, take starvation in the other direction into this gorging thing that we're doing that you've done competitively.
you were starving. It just wasn't for food.
Yeah.
Right.
I honestly don't know. It's where you're at in life, and you got to learn
Yeah.
lessons.
Different
And
kinda
believe me,
hungry.
when we're looking at youth right now, and we're saying this next generation is going to mess this world up, well, there's no hope for humanity. We got to understand we're looking at youth trying to get experience from a place of experience, forgetting what it was like to be young.
Man, I guess I agree with. I absolutely agree with that. I think every generation has the opportunity to be the next greatest generation or better than the previous one.
If the situations come up.
That opportunity exists daily because we are all trying to make that opportunity for them, and we're doing everything we can. Some of the things I worry about, and it kind of goes back to our last deal, like the technical trades. That is something it's a dying art in many ways. And I say art, and I mean that respectfully. A lot of these are artisans. Whether you're an electrician, if you ever watched some of those plumbers, man, they're so meticulous on what they do, and it is right. And I'm afraid a lot of these basic necessities that we all have to survive are going the other way. And we're getting to a place where people can't perform those duties to the point where it's going to become a problem in the future if we don't turn that boat around. And I may be completely wrong, but I don't feel like I am. I think it's very much a problem.
Or different processes will have to come into place that they can't handle. Like, they're going to have to make their own way in the world
Absolutely.
that they feel like working through. And you
Absolutely.
kind of think maybe to an extent every generation has sort of done that. Like, they do have an opportunity to build their own path.
You're right.
While at the same time realizing that generations before built paths, but they got to walk their own.
So, I'm gonna say that this is a little different this time because we have kind of a war of active versus inactive going on, and I can't be a technician in the world and not be active. Right, I have to be out in the grind, in the
Physically,
elements.
yeah.
Yeah, I have to deal with these large structures that I'm working on. If I am a person who has spent a lot of time inactive, playing video games, if I've lived a sedentary life, that's going to have zero appeal to me. And so I look at this because traditionally economics would take care of this, right? We have, remember the nursing shortages or the air traffic control shortages in the 80s. So it would take these positions eventually pay enough that the interest will then align itself.
The beauty of supply and demand.
Yeah, and then you have a balancing effect. Where I don't know that that's going to happen now is we have an inactive society.
Yeah.
And so if you're going to tell me that, okay, I can be a computer programmer or something in that lane where I'm sedentary and I'm going to make $80K a year, but you can come over here and make $150K as a tech, if I've lived a sedentary life, your money cannot move me into a now active life. Yeah. And that's what I worry about because kids aren't out in the streets anymore. and kids aren't playing
They play
the way
different. They
kids
play
used to
different.
play.
Yes.
Okay, but the NFL is having to remind our kids to get outside 60 minutes a day.
Yeah.
And so when you have an organization, and that just speaks to kind of where we are, parents in and of their own interest are not moving children out to play, or I don't know how you rationalize it for a parent, but we're in a society right now where marketers that normally just take from us are having to tell us, put your kids outside, get them out in the yard, make sure they play. And that's something different, because between the inactivity and then the obesity, which becomes debilitating, how do we have a turnaround real fast and just collect all these guys that are going to do all this physical work? Where are they going to come from in an inactive society?
Well, society learns like I do. They're going to have to experience the mess up of getting to that point.
They're going to have to get in shape first.
Yeah, to your point.
That's the only good thing about ever witnessing a big systemic problem or whatever kind of problem in society is that when it gets bad enough, that's what we're going to learn from.
And there will be a balance point. I agree with you 100%. Economics will solve that. I guess some of my concern is a lot of these traits, whatever they are, they take time. You're talking about years after you
it's
get.
Not quick.
Yeah, you're talking a 10, 15-year deal to get to the point where you can be a master artisan of whatever that trade is. Well, how much time are we going to allow for that, and what's that economic lag going to look like till we get there?
Yeah,
that's it's a good question.
That's considerable. But you also have the balance of all of these things needing less work as well. And so as technology comes along in everything, right, you have an advancement in the efficiency. So my 2000, or what would that be? My 1982 Delta 88 at 100,000 miles, dude, that thing was looking to retire hard, right? It turned into a tractor on hubcaps. But now I can drive a Honda Accord well over 200,000 miles. And it feels like the same car.
But best believe as those cars got more electric, hybrid like your Honda, there was the generation above saying they don't make cars like they used to.
But what I'm saying is like the human interaction in a product world that's continually getting better requires less. And so I don't know how that balances into this whole equation, but it's part of this conversation with, are we going to have the labor to build the next house? And are we going to have the labor? Well, we are. Yeah. We use labor the same way we do currency. We're going to import the labor because the labor basically comes with the currency rate. And so you have that dynamic as well, right? We have labor coming from the South that we don't really want to acknowledge or treat correctly. And they're going to do a lot of these work this because they came from an active society.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
It's
kind of this shifting in all directions that really becomes hard to see.
So if you had to have I kind of hear now what I'm thinking about is a difference between the oppressors and the oppressed. So it would seem like what we're kind of saying is that those of power and position are going to do as little physical activity as possible, and they're going to get this level of society to do all the work for them.
That's a lie. That's the world.
So my question is, which one would you rather be in? I'd rather be broke and hardworking.
The question is where did you start?
And oppressing.
Yeah,
that's the way that I think we need to raise the generation coming up. Let's break that 90s mentality of everybody's got to go be a billionaire and do nothing and be inactive and force other people to do their work for them. And let's raise a generation that knows that there's no better work reward than hard work itself.
I think
the knowledge from work and habits.
See them transition through that realm. And that way we've got an ample supply of both ends of it. You can be a very wealthy person and still know how to do things. Mm-hmm. And you can be a poor person and not know how to do anything, right? Your life's just going to get a hell of a lot worse. I would like to see a balance of both. I was going to say, I don't know if you guys do, and I rarely get to watch it anymore because I don't watch it in front of my kids, but I absolutely believe The Simpsons and South Park are telling the future.
They got some good
lessons. They can absolutely tell the future. I watched a little bit of South Park the other day, and it's the title of it's Nobody Can Fix Shit Anymore, I think. And like the richest people in town is the handyman.
Yeah.
Like his truck's running on dubs. He's got gold chains. People are willing to give him like $2,000 to fix the garage door or whatever.
Yeah, everybody can love a banker or a financer that the banks are supposed to be the ones with all the money. But where the rubber meets the road, where where the experience,
it's awesome.
Where it gets tangible. That's the important part.
There's also a myth that you're going to go to college and become a billionaire based off the knowledge you gained at college. You're not. You're at some point in time, whether or not you went to Votech or whether or not you went to a college, in order to be a billionaire, you're going to have to own something.
Yeah.
And that's going to involve more than the one dimension you learn. Like if you went to Votech and you learned how to be a great plumber, they didn't teach you how to run books. They didn't teach you how to manage people. You're going to have to learn that. If you went to college, right, and you're not a plumber, but later on you buy a plumbing business, you got a whole lot of knowledge you don't know that based on the physics of this business that you're running.
Timing is a lot of it too. One of the smartest business guys that I know, and he's a personal friend of mine. He made an offhanded quote. It's funny how somebody can say something, and it may mean nothing to them,
but stick in your
it
head.
Has huge consequences to you.
Echo through your existence.
Even change your mentality. And we were having a conversation, and he popped off something, and I don't know if he meant it to be as profound as he did, but it's one of the most true statements I've ever heard in life and in business. Timing is everything, 100%. Whether it's luck or planned or a little bit of both, timing is absolutely everything.
Yeah.
Preparation's good, opportunity's great, but if the timing isn't right, none of it works out.
Well, hopefully that's a lesson that can be learned throughout having to be experiential learners. Hopefully the generation
I don't think so.
coming up, man, that's what if we go kind of wrap up and roll in with the end of it here, what I'd say to anybody that whatever generation you're sitting in, if you're at the oldest, understand that youth is here to break the structures that while you're familiar with them, maybe they don't work anymore. And if you're in the middle, which is a fun place to be, you get to understand that the old ones that are on the way out appreciate what they have to teach. Because there's something on that back end of life that us as the middle generation, we don't know yet.
Yeah.
And a whole lot of them will tell you that there's nothing more important than what you do with your time and your health.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's something I think that can echo down from that top generation, no matter what we agree with on their structures or not.
But they can't teach you everything, though, because the world that they grew up in is not the world we have
different.
now.
It's changed.
So as you lead the next generation, to a certain degree,
there's a disconnect.
You're not exactly qualified to lead. And we've had this conversation with phones. Yeah. I don't manage my phone well, but now I am tasking my child with managing their phone. Where I'm clearly, like, it'd be like showing up drunk to an AA meeting. Right. Be like, guys, you really got to get your stuff together here. I don't know what your problem is. I've been on there 10 years longer than y'all, and you're slurring your words as you're doing it. You're not always equipped.
It's hard to lead by example.
I don't know. Like, so you think about influencers. You brought that up earlier. An influencer in my life was Hulk Hogan. It was Don Mattingly. Right? They were unique individuals who kind of through their craft had already defined they were at the top and they were excellence. An influencer today is somebody who's done enough things to make enough people curious to look at them in social media. Yeah. You could be an influencer that's just airbrushing makeup on your face all day. And so now that person is qualified by whatever uniqueness they have, that we have all these kids looking at them and modeling behavior. Well, it just opens up the door for a lot more people to influence the youth in ways that you and I can't even like. If my daughter is getting influenced by an airbrusher spraying makeup, I don't even have the line of sight of that. I'm not sure exactly how to get in front of that. Whereas my dad always knew who Hulk Hogan was. Right?
I think
he knew my idols.
That goes back to just like we were talking with your son. The influence that you have on them and their decision-making ability to know who's a good influence or not. So I was watching my son the other day, and I really haven't paid much attention to that until just recently because my son's 11. So he's got to watching these videos and doing some of these, whether he knows it consciously or not, obviously they're watching that and he's interested. And
monkey
his friends
see, monkey do.
It's going to have some unconscious impact on him, right?
Yeah.
Influence on him. And he was watching the deal the other day, and there's this guy, and I don't care for it. I don't understand the curiosity with it, but he's made millions of dollars, and all he does is tear shit up. Brand new car, let's go see where we can crash it. Brand new truck, watch me tear it apart. Just whatever it is. Brand new 4-wheeler, let's go run it down this hill.
So he's got enough people to look at him.
Yeah.
That now the YouTube thing works and he gets paid.
It started to compound, so the more he tears up, the more he gets paid.
Yeah.
So the cooler things he gets. We got a plane, we got a tank, whatever. We're just tearing everything up. And my son's watching this, and I watch it for a little bit, and he's like, says something. I'm like, That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen in my life. We're not watching that. That's stupid. And a little bit later, he's like, wonder why he's tearing all that up. I'm like, I don't know. But I guess he's getting rich doing it, but you're not going to do that.
That just goes to the fact money doesn't excuse everything. Like, there's so many atrocities that get done on this
there's
earth
some things
just because somebody thought it was okay because they made some money.
Yeah.
But tell you right
some
now,
of it's just
making
funny.
money doesn't justify any behavior.
Some of it's really funny. There are some kids on YouTube, and I'll catch myself watching this. Kids on YouTube that walk up behind people in Home Depot and go, ooh, ah. And it flips people out,
Yeah,
right? And people turn around and go like, what's wrong with you, man? You okay? Are you all right? And you can see you've pushed them like to the limits of their stability.
Yeah,
right?
that envelope has been opened.
They're ready to take a swing. They don't know if they're going to be attacked. And I watch it for about 5 minutes, and I'm laughing, man. I'm really enjoying it. And then I realize like
Now you're a part of it.
I'm contributing to this.
Yeah.
Like, I'm contributing to, we're laughing at a human who just basically got knocked sideways with what was that? I don't know what's going on. I'm in public. And I wonder about some of those things and their contribution to society.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of kids watching that.
Yeah,
But you can't.
And that's a destabilizer. And maybe I'm getting older. Maybe that's the exact same laugh that I had at Jackass, that I laughed at an earlier age. But
Yes, it
it's
is.
available. The bar to get that out there is low.
Yeah.
The bar to keep it away from your child's sight doesn't exist.
You're gonna have to bulletproof your kids. In my opinion, that world is out there.
Yeah.
You can't protect them from it.
You can't.
The best
teach
thing you
them
can
to
do
navigate it.
Yeah.
teach them to navigate it. Let them know what's right and wrong.
Yeah.
Some things like that. Now,
And that gives some grace when they figure out what's
Yeah.
wrong the wrong way.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So this episode, we're starting this new idea of show and tell, and we didn't bring the firearm here just to intimidate, but you have a show and tell.
You guys
item.
marched me in with it.
Yeah,
Don't lie.
there was no I think we would have picked something a little bit
The
more
second-
modern.
He didn't come
Yeah.
back completely
It wasn't
voluntarily. He
voluntary.
came back at the
Yeah.
end of a bayonet.
This
point.
this is not something that I think we try to take down a small
You can't
community
tell,
with.
but I'm
Yeah, but
heavily sedated right now.
it didn't take much. All right, so tell us about this piece.
So yeah, this is one of those things that impacts me very heavily. This is a M1 Garand. They made over 5 million of these. This was the weapon of choice for all of World War II. My grandparents were heavily involved in that. I'm going to say anybody my age. If you don't think your grandparents were involved, think again. Whether they were at
They didn't
war
tell you about it.
or
Yeah.
here at home, they were more involved than
It
you'll
touched
ever know.
every person.
Absolutely. And I've always been fascinated by that age group, the greatest generation, they call them. Both my grandfathers, for example, were involved in World War II and deployed overseas. And I've never thought of them really as anything amazing. They were just my grandpas, right?
Yeah,
I mean, that's my grandpa, that's my grandma.
where you came from?
They're good people. They got good, strong ethics, and they're well respected in town. Never thought any more about it. Later in life, I started to understand just how amazing that actually is for that generation, because you're talking about people that were born and raised in the Great Depression with nothing, especially rural. Most of that was rural America. So they got plucked out of that at a very young age, thrown into World War II, saw terrible atrocities, were part of the war machine out of necessity for their homeland. The people that were left at home are all part of that war machine. They're making great personal sacrifices for the boys overseas. They do all these things, and they come home, and they start families, and they start their little businesses, and they raise their families with ethics and morals and values, and they say nothing about the things that they've experienced. They leave that world behind for the most part. And most of that generation to this point is past. There's very few remaining that were part of that.
Yeah.
But once you understand more about what they endured and what they went through, and the fact that they just came home and went to work and went to be a productive member of society and wanted better things for their children, and used some of those experiences not to maybe tell them what happened, but to help mold and guide them into a better society for their children.
Exactly. I think that's one thing that we owe to the generation that came before. is to make this a better existence, to make this a better life on our planet. You know, I didn't go through any of that World War II kind of stuff. I never even got close to war. About as hard as I ever got to in life was scraping hot tar off a roof.
Sure.
But I hope that my son never has to do anything.
I agree.
Like, I hope anybody in society, we just make this world a better place.
I think those experiences, those experiences and those historic events, they need to be touched on. I don't want anybody to have to ever go through those kind of atrocities again, but we need to know that they happen and believe that, and that needs to be instilled into those next generations.
Yeah.
We're going to make mistakes. We don't need to make some of these mistakes again.
Can you
some mistakes
imagine
can be left in the past?
Absolutely.
Well, can you imagine the feeling that must have been to come back from war and you have all this, early 20s group now, they've won a world war and now they've come back to work on their country. And what an incredible time that must have been. Just the optimism of the future of what we have now, right? We've dominated the world in some way and we've come to the rescue in some other ways, but now we're back. We're in our early 20s. We've survived, and now it's time to
that was
grow
a time
and prosper.
Of great prosperity and growth.
It was.
And not just in the United States, but across the world, because a lot of that is true. They're done with that world. They want better for themselves and better for their family, and there was a tremendous amount of growth and prosperity.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I think we've made the world a better place. Our generation hasn't had to go through this sort of a conflict. And the generations coming up, I don't think they'll see any sort of need for a bayonet to be used in a trench. And so, therefore, we're advancing society just like we need to. Be optimistic about the youth. Be optimistic about the future that the generations before have laid before them.
Make the youth better. Don't be optimistic. Instill in them
you
the
kind of
values
owe it.
that we need.
You kind of owe it. It's somebody worked on you as a child.
Yeah.
It's the right thing to do.
It's not just
whether
going to
it's
happen.
your children or a
We've gotta
voluntary
work at it.
situation. Like it's not. When you think about it, is there something I can do to make anything better? One of the things you can do is contribute what you know and what you've experienced and potentially your ethics into a developing youth.
We can't passively raise our children.
No.
We have to actively raise them. I think we've kind of got into that slum a little bit, and I think to some extent, through conversations I've heard here and with other people, we're waking up to that fact. Like, we make your kids go outside because you're giving them too much time on that video or on this or on that.
Inactivity. Too much of it was just stay quiet and be still. We thought that was good parenting. I think our generation is figuring out that telling your kid to be quiet and be still is not good parenting.
Go break something.
Go
Go
do
get in
anything
trouble.
besides sit quiet and be still.
And they need your awareness. That's one of the biggest contributions I think you can make to anybody developing, right, is your time. Your time and the fact that they can come to you, they can get feedback from you. You're there as a voice that's seeing them, that's aware of them. I think a lot of time in youth, you feel like you're not seen. You exist, but nobody's really. You're just kind of glad
you're
to be
talked
there.
around.
Yeah, and I've seen you do this when you get eye level with kids, which is a great trick or a great practice, right?
Yeah.
When you get eye level with kids, that's so rare for them not to have to do this thing to adults that they're like, wow, this person now is.
It gives them a level of
talking.
comfort. It makes it,
You
It
get more
validates
productivity.
them.
You don't have to shave their time when you get eye level with them, do you?
my gosh.
Only if they earn it.
Right.
It just depends. That's subjective.
Look, Junior, these packages ain't moving themselves.
Oh, yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
I can't believe I thought
saw
that is
you
like
on
one of the top 5 worst things I've done in my life. I did not anticipate telling the story
Hey, I'm
on
proud
here.
of you,
Oh,
man.
we've all
But
done
it does
something similar.
speak
We've
to
done
the
something
show.
similar.
It speaks to the show. Don't
Absolutely.
be ashamed of your experience
Yeah.
or whatever.
Learn from it and go. Grow with it.
The
share it.
thing
Yeah,
I
there-
should be ashamed of if I was still doing it.
The reason why I didn't tell you my stories has nothing to do with the fact that I didn't commit those atrocities. It's more about self-preservation. My self-preservation moment was a little had a little more depth in the fiber than you. Perhaps.
Well, as I
Statute of
mentioned in the show,
limitations hadn't run
I'm
out
like,
yet.
listen, man, I was a bad dude back then. Right now, we ain't talking about that. We're gonna let
leave the
that,
past
we're
in
gonna
the
let that
past.
go.
Leave
We're
the
gonna let that
lessons
go.
in the present.
You had a pet story that I was really interested in
talking
hearing.
about lessons, man. So my parents are, in their early 70s. They're retired, and they've been around livestock and animals their entire life, and they travel a lot. So most of their animals have to be pretty well self-preserving,
Okay,
right? Support themselves. And they've never had a lot of pets around the house. We've always had dogs and stuff like that. This stray cat comes up like a couple years ago, man. And for some strange reason, my dad like takes a liking to it and starts feeding it, which is very uncharacteristic of him.
Okay.
I mean, he's one of those, a cat knows how
in
to
the
feed
way you
itself.
run it over. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's got a moment with his cat.
So yeah, I don't know what happened, but at any rate, he'd been feeding it, and it's a little bitty yellow thing like this, kind of a sickly looking little animal. And this rock's on a couple weeks, and he's doing whatever, feeding it, and kind of acknowledges it every once in a while. I'm like, this ain't gonna end good, man. I've seen this play out too many times.
But you're curious. You're watching.
I'm watching. I don't say anything. I'm like, your cat don't look too good. Yeah, he needs to catch some more rats, or he'll say something.
So he's letting the outdoors grizzle this cat up.
We're feeding a little, just kind of supplementing,
Okay,
help the cat out.
Keep the flavor in his mouth.
Anyways, they take off on one of their vacations, and they're gone like 3 months. They're kind of snowbird kind of deal.
Mm-hmm.
They go enjoy it, and I'm happy for them. And like every couple of weeks, I come check on the property or whatever. Well,
Not on the cat.
So I come in, and they've been gone. Maybe, I don't know, man. I can't remember, a month or something. And I roll in there, and there's some packages on the driveway, and this cat's curled up at the front door. And I don't pay any attention. I'm just like, cat's okay. So go on. I leave. A couple weeks go by. I roll in there. Cat's curled up at the front door. I'm like, man, that cat really likes that front door, and I don't think anything about it. So a couple weeks go by, and my sister swings through there, and she checks everything out. Cat's at the front door. First time she's been there.
Cat's in the usual spot.
She doesn't think anything about it.
Yeah.
A few more weeks go by.
so bad.
I roll back through. And at this point, I'm like, man, that doesn't look quite right. So I get over there, and sure enough, man, this cat has expired.
Too late for CPR.
Right here.
You're mouth to mouth at this point.
Was his chest pump?
It was curled up like it just went to sleep. Like just curled up and went to sleep, and it was dry. Like it didn't rot, man. And that I think, I don't know if it was like
Wait, how long had it been sitting there dead before you realized it was dead?
At this point, we're talking like 6-9 weeks that this cat's been static on
He's
the
just
front
going back
porch.
to nature. Where are the crows? They're supposed to take care of him.
And I sent it to my sister, and I'm like, this cat loved my family so much, it died waiting on him. And I don't know if in my mind this sounds so cruel, but in my mind I can just see this cat like sitting there meowing its last meow.
No,
waiting
man.
on Grandpa Brisco to come throw a little catnip out. It's dedicated. It ain't leaving. It's got a bond.
It was definitely dead the first time you saw it, right? You didn't kill it through starvation? You certain?
Man, I mean, I don't know that.
Okay.
But
You can't think the cat would lay up in a ball and die of starvation.
I'm kind of like
I really think it must have had a stroke.
He
or
clearly
something, and
died.
It died in its sleep.
Well, he died
something.
there for what?
I wish I'd kept it. I would have just had it mounted like one of those doorstop things or something. So,
It liked doors.
here's where it really gets good. We didn't tell my parents. We just sent them pictures like the cat's in the front door.
Oh.
And you really can't tell because it's just a yellow blob of cat.
Yeah.
Right?
So, you're
Like a month later, they finally come home, and I'm over there, and I don't say a word. I'm like, oh. And Dad's like, cat starved to death. What do you mean? He's like, come home, and damn cat's dead in the front porch. I'm like,
No, that's
well, you
crazy.
think it got sick or something? He goes, no. That lazy son of a bitch starved to death.
well, I mean, that's kind of
So
true, dude.
that's it. It
I mean,
laid
that's
up in a
true.
ball and starved to death.
Cats are supposed to.
I'd rather die than go get my own
Yeah.
food.
I'm going to give you my cat story now because this is one of my, not my all-time favorite cat stories, but this is up there. So I'm buying houses. This is probably about 3 years ago. And I'm buying a package of 9 houses. And they don't want me to see one of them. Which, that's got my dander up, right?
That's
I'm
the one
like,
you want to
clearly,
see.
why you want me to see that? Why you want me to see it, right? And we're getting close to closing, and I had an inspection window. And I'm like, I need to see this house. And they're like, okay, we're going to have to arrange it with the tenant. And most of them had tenants. I was buying them with tenants. So it wasn't a big deal. And so they wait till about 3 days outside of closing. And I told the realtor, this broker, I'm like, they think I'm signing. I'm not going to closing until I've seen this house. I know what they're doing. I think I have an idea what they're doing. And so they're like, okay, well, the tenant is Section 8, and we've had some challenges, and we didn't want you to be. I'm like, oh, just give me a time when I can go over there, and I'll go look at the house, and I'll tell you whether or not I want to buy it or not. And so I show up at the house, and I've been to hoarder houses before, right? Just a little fort. We're going into a hoarder house here. And so I knock on the front door, and real nice lady, she comes to the door, and she's like, what can I do for you? And I'm like, well, I'm going to buy the house. And she goes, oh, okay. You like right now you're going to buy the house? And I'm like, well, no, it's not exactly how it works, but I need to inspect the house. Did they tell you I was coming? And she was like, no, nobody told me. Well, that's problematic. You're supposed to give your tenants 24 hours. But I'm like, well, ma'am, I know it's inconvenient, but I'm here, and I really only need about 15 minutes if I can just walk through the house. She's talking to me through the crack in the door at this point.
Oh, yeah, you haven't seen anything.
I haven't seen anything. I don't know what I'm walking into.
Yeah.
And so she's like, yeah, that's fine. Again, really nice lady. So she goes, it's a bit messy. And I'm like, that's all right. I go in a lot of houses. Don't worry about that. And she's like, okay, well, give me just a second, and I'll let you in. And I'm like, okay. So I stand at the door, and I hear a little bit of shuffling, and I hear something like collapse. It sounded a bit like a folding chair. You remember the old school aluminum folding chair? It had kind of a noise to it.
Fold like a cheap lawn
chair. Then she opens the door and steps back about 2 foot, and that's about all you had. You had about 2 foot in the doorway, and then we went to what I can only describe as ant trails. Ant trails through debris in this house that was probably, if it's an 8-foot ceiling, it's probably 6-7 foot high. And she goes,
is it like trash or is it
like
it's mostly trash. Like, so when a hoarder house is basically, that is a physical display of a cluttered mind. And so when you're walking inside of a hoarder house, you're walking inside the psychology of the individual that will not throw things away. For whatever reason, this is where they've been left in life, but it's sad from a mental health perspective, right? But I'm gonna tell the joke anyway. So she's like, would you like me to lead you through the place? And of course, at this point in time, I can see the mountains. I know there's a lot of newspapers involved. There were a lot of Sonic cups involved. She'd been collecting Sonic cups and stacking them up to 8-foot tile. And I'm like, well, why don't you just go ahead and lead me? And, I need to see the kitchen. I need to see the bathroom and show me the bedrooms. And I've already known, like, I know how to handle this house, right? We get a dumpster and there's a challenge there because she's there. She's Section 8, so I have to work through all that. But the amount of debris inside of a house doesn't scare me. I've dealt with that before. So she starts walking me through the house, and the smell's intense.
I can't imagine.
I'm breathing through my mouth, but I'm worried about my mouth trapping all whatever's going through my nose and my mouth, so I'm trying not to breathe.
We're breathing through our ears.
I'm trying not to breathe.
Trying to keep breathing the same breath.
There was some of this going on. Like, I appreciate you having me over.
No, I don't think anything to drink.
I'm going to hang out
Thank
with
you.
my armpit for a minute and see who I can get right. And so we're walking through the house, and we come to the bathroom. And there's a lot of debris in the bathroom. And the shower curtain's forward. I go grab the shower curtain, pull it back. And I look down, and there's a dead cat. And the cat's been there for a minute. And I go, ma'am, is that your cat? And she looked at it, and she goes, oh, I thought he ran away.
Oh, my gosh.
That's got to hurt.
And I was like, no, I think he passed.
He ran away.
And she looks at me, and she goes, well, don't worry about that. I'll deal with it later. Let me show you the bedroom.
Oh, my God.
So we turned around.
The cat was dead to her.
The cat was dead. There was nothing to be done. And
it was dead to her, and it's dead in real life.
We turned around and went back to the tour of the house. And that's my dead cat story is one, I guess. There's probably a couple houses out there with dead cats laid up in, nice newspaper coffins. And
Sonic Cup problem.
Not all the owners are aware that there is actually a death going on.
Yeah,
they are low maintenance. I haven't had to buy cat food in a while. I wonder why that bag of cat food's lasted for 6 months.
That one last big shed.
So anyway, funny story with this lady. So I end up buying a house, and Section 8 has a disposition set up. Their houses are supposed to be inspected once a year for condition and functionality. And clearly, nobody had been inspecting this house.
Right.
And so I go to Section 8, and I'm like, well, I don't want to kick this lady out. And you guys have already been you funded this in its current state. And Section 8, they have a social worker. They have a caseworker that's assigned to them. And so I talked the caseworker into continuing to pay for it. And so the annual inspection comes around about 6 months later. And the caseworker calls me and goes, hey, it's time for the inspection. And I'm like, what? You remember this house? This is the one I had to call you about. And she goes, Oh, yeah. I think we'll skip that inspection. But the lady went on to live for 2 years in that house. And it was sad. It was sad. I got to know her a little bit.
What do you think the odds are that cat got moved?
I think the
That cat's still there.
The cat probably, I don't know. That's a great question. I didn't go looking for it.
No.
Because we had a remodel after that, right? So she passes about 2 years later. We got to go in and get everything out. And as I recall, that was about a 3 roll-off house. But they're not, surprisingly, that stuff in a house, it's not really that damaging. It just occupies cube. It's not really a hard remodel. It's not the most challenging remodel. I'd rather deal with a remodel that involved a dead cat than a dead human. And that'll be another story for another day. But I've dealt with one of those as well. And I'll take the cat every time.
Especially in a tub.
Every time. Oh,
now
yeah.
you just got a tub problem.
Conveniently died in a porcelain coffin.
The smallest living thing that
well.
died is easier.
It worked out well. So, yeah. Well, I think that couple dead cats is the perfect way to wrap the podcast.
Well,
it's very upbeat.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right.
All 9 lives right there.
Yeah,
No,
that cat had 9
she
lives.
smoked a few trying to get out of that tub, I guess. I'll tell you what, if I lived in that house, I'd take 1 life and be happy. Like, I don't need the other 8. Like, I'll spend 1 and be done. That's fine. All right, man. Well,
That's
we
awesome.
appreciate you coming back. Anything else we got to talk about here?
No, man. I think we touched on all I got in my mind.
You did have an interesting fact about this gun that I wasn't aware of. That there is a government organization called the Civil Marksmanship.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
It's really it's interesting. It's a little bit ironic, if you will, in this day and time. And I want you guys to know, from a belief standpoint, I think it's a great program. But so this initiative was started like in 1909, 1903, and the goal was to some extent train the citizens of the nation at the time so that they would have some basic knowledge of firearms and marksmanship and some of those things. So in the event we did go to World War, which we did a couple times, they would already have some of that very basic training down.
It's almost like we were planning for it.
Yeah, so it's had a tremendous amount of success, and it still exists today. So if you go online or write to this organization, you can become a part of this government program and purchase a firearm like this that they will send you along with a bunch of information.
You had to buy it?
Oh, you had to buy it.
Yeah, you have to buy it.
What did that run you?
So this one was purchased. I'm the third owner of this rifle, and it was purchased through the program. And I think this one was purchased in around 2000 or 2001. I've got the paperwork. And at that time, the cost was $550.
Okay.
Which is, I paid a tremendous amount more for this firearm than that. I don't know what they are today, but I mean, in this day and time, you can't buy much for $500.
Yeah.
And a firearm like this, these are very well built, very well engineered, very robust. That is a very expensive firearm for $500. So it's very much trying to support that. Again,
yeah, and that's $2,000 money. That probably is about $1,200, $1,500.
Yeah, they're very much
inflation.
Supporting the fundamentals of firearm safety, marksmanship, some of those things. I find it terribly ironic that the program exists, and I believe it should. I think we should all have, if you choose to, have some of those basic things and have those freedoms, if you will. Where I find it ironic is we have these programs ongoing, and at the same time we have other programs that are trying to shut things like this down.
Yeah.
So they're kind of
tricky.
Fighting each other, and I'm not sure which one should win or which one shouldn't. Maybe they'll just stay.
It's part of the process of change.
Stay in limbo.
The right thing will always win out.
When I see a gun like this and I see the knife on the end of it, man, it sends shivers
home to me,
down
man.
my spine. It reminds me
Absolutely
how comfortable I've lived and how uncomfortable some other
Absolutely.
people have had to live.
You know,
It's a humbling thing to stare at.
When you guys, I think everybody's seen Saving Private Ryan.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably the most, and obviously I've never experienced it, but just based on the history and the things I've read, that's probably the most accurate war scenes you'll ever see. And this gun's in there a lot. So this M1, when it shoots at 6 calibers, when it shoots at 6 rounds out, the bolt comes back and it throws the empty mag out, so you can throw another one in. And it makes a very distinctive clinking sound.
Okay.
And you can hear it all through Saving Private Ryan.
I think I can hear it.
Once you've fired one of these and you go watch that movie and you think about what that must have been like with tens of thousands of those going off. And this is a 30-06, by the way, guys.
It's not a small bullet.
I'm here to tell you.
Yeah, that kicks.
If you're downrange from this firearm, you're in danger. This thing is extremely deadly. But when you fire one of these in person and you hear that clink, man, it sends, to your point, I can go fire this gun, or just, if I'm having a bad day, walk out and look at it and some others I've got, and I'm instantly in a better place, because I'm like, I am so proud to have the freedoms that we have, live where we live. All these things that we think are problems, they're not problems. The men that had to carry these knew what problems were.
Yeah. Can you imagine?
And we owe it to that generation to not regret.
Absolutely.
To continue to make life better.
Don't make those same mistakes.
Yeah, no point do I hope my son has to carry one of those.
I salute everybody in the armed forces, and I know there's a lot of generations that have served in different places. I just choose this one because I can reach out and touch it, and it connects to me.
Yeah, it was close to us.
Yeah,
it was close to us. I think about the just going back to Saving Private Ryan, the gulp of breath you'd have to take on D-Day to run on that beach, just knowing like the odds of me dying are greater than the odds of me living. And so in that moment, you have to have some release of your own self-preservation in order to move forward.
I love how the Vikings did it. They tell them, you're already dead. Now go in the battle and
it's the cleanest thing to think at that point. Yeah,
I think that's the healthiest way. That's exactly the way I'd go into battle. I'm dead now. I got to go earn my right to live.
I would think you would have to turn so many sensory things off just to perform. For self-preservation, for one thing. I mean, I couldn't. Again, I can't fathom what they went through, but when I go shoot this rifle at my range at home, which I've got tuned in very well for any of those crackheads that want to come experiment, there's some copper buried underneath the plates at various ranges. Come on out. We'll run the gauntlet and see what happens.
You make it a game of American
Gladiator. We'll see what happens. But no, when I fire one of these, especially at the end, when I hear that
bing,
that amazing clink, it just puts shivers down my back.
Yeah.
Unreal.
Yeah, it would be a harrowing experience, and you don't know what the adrenaline would be like. You don't, what if you survive that day? You know, you made it through the first day, and now there's more to come, but like what is the adrenaline dump like?
Yeah.
Or maybe you got to stay awake for 36 hours. Like, I mean, I think the men that did some of that hand-to-hand combat, both in World War I and World War II, they pressed the limits of human capability in ways that we'll just never be able to fathom, thankfully.
Absolutely.
But that was a special generation. They definitely moved our existence forward in ways that probably we'll never even really be able to understand entirely.
I agree.
Or we're figuring out right now. Like, because Gen X is the generation that has lived that life of ease that was provided there.
I agree 100%. And I say that because, again, my grandparents were always just my grandparents. And as I've aged, I've understood, especially as I've researched more of the things that they did and what they went through, it's amazing how normal they were. You know what I'm saying? It's amazing the things that they did and experienced and moved society forward with, and they were just my grandparents.
It makes you think that the trauma also can have some leveling effect, because they went through a great humbling event and then came back and acted humble.
Absolutely.
And there's something.
Well, we say that like it's a blanket statement. Some did, some didn't. Like, you can't deny that they started calling it shell shock. Like, there were after effects.
Absolutely.
They didn't just come back snappy.
I'm not prescribing.
I saw my grandpa. He fought in Korea, and I don't think that his demeanor was of someone who had never used one of these.
Sure.
Like, there was a different character.
That's the conundrum, though. Like, that stress builds a humble existence, right? Because you've been to something where life has been taken away. Now you value the life you have. And we don't want anybody in this generation to have to go through that. But then when you don't go through that, you don't have that humbling moment, then you walk around sometime with this feeling that there should be something greater.
I think how they, especially I can speak again for my grandparents, how they dealt with it when they came back. You take my grandpa Hunt he was a POW in Germany right after the Battle of the Bulge, actually, for the majority of the winter, which was a terrible winter, one of the worst winters they'd ever had. And they basically starved him to death. Again, you got to remember, the Germans are out of supplies at this point. They're not even feeding their own troops. So the POWs are essentially just eating dirt and grass.
And can you imagine how angry those German soldiers would be as well?
Oh, yeah.
I've thought of that too, right? Like
Terrible.
so I'm sitting here
The
on
punishment was terrible.
the end of a war, and my team is losing, and I don't even know I'm about to be what am I going to have to pay for? And now I got POWs, and I'm going to be compassionate.
Unbelievable.
That's a hard place to
conditions.
be.
Where I was going at one, so he went through all those horrific things and saw all those atrocities, and he came back and he never spoke of any of it. But
Same with mine.
he raised a very successful family, was very committed to the community, to his church, to his religion. All these little different things is how I'm assuming how he dealt with that, and through his grandkids.
Yeah.
Now I can remember there are some things that stuck with him all the way through. One was that mug, right? And I've got a diary, and you guys kind of browsed through it earlier. So he picked up a mug, and he kept a little bitty diary somehow in this POW account. But he would write down the daily activities if anything had changed. And one day he made a note in there he got a mug. And the significance of that, if you didn't have something to dip up out of the soup or grab the dirt with, you didn't eat.
Yeah.
You would starve to death. So a mug was a life-saving
So
deal.
and what's funny is when I read the diary, and he said he got himself a mug, I'm like, oh, I got a beer that day.
Yeah.
Like my mentality,
we can't imagine.
even
You
go
can't
there.
even fathom.
No,
We can't
I can't
fathom.
get near that.
And
So I'm just thinking like brown side. Oh, I'm good for him. He got a beer.
One of his tendencies, and my sister and I think all of our cousins thought this was really strange, but when he would sit down to eat, and he did it up until he was very later in life, until he passed away. So everybody would make their plate, and he would put all his food on the plate, and stir it all up. And it didn't matter what it was. We stirred it up into a slurry.
Huh.
And he had a cup. He always had a cup of water or whatever we were drinking. And he would eat everything on his plate and never touch that drink until he was completely done. And then he would take a drink of whatever. Whew. And that goes back to, like, part of the time he was there, he was transferred by rail for like 7 days without a drop of water.
Wow.
And when they got to wherever they were going, they gave him and like 6 guys a half a loaf of bread and no water. So from that day on, he's like, you savor every time you take a drink, and you make sure you enjoy every bit of it.
You imagine eating bread, no water?
I can't.
Oh.
The amount of
in freezing weather after you've been on a train for 5 days,
and deciding like,
mind-boggling.
all right, there's 6 of us. We're going to have to divide this thing fairly precisely.
Mind-boggling. Yeah.
No,
Amazing.
it really makes you think about those times when you complain about the Wi-Fi.
No doubt.
Yeah. really just makes
That's a
you
good
check the life that you're
Yeah.
that you're living.
Yeah. I can't believe you didn't put cheese on my tater tots.
Yeah. What is wrong with
I'm
you?
never coming back
I
to
am
the
1
store
star
again.
for
I
you.
am thrilled, though, that's the problems that we're passing off the next generation.
I
hope
agree.
they don't have to have the mental and
Dude, I
physical
feel guilty.
fortitude to go through war.
I feel
I'm fine
guilt
with that.
about it though. Like if I scrape off how I feel, we know we haven't done any hefty living as a generation. We know. What was the heaviest lifting we did? We worried about the Russians for a little bit when they were pumping
70
movies
hours
at us.
that 1 week.
Yeah, we really had it.
ours
We've
is
had it really hard.
Is
Like,
more dealing with those kind of
When we-
day-to-day life being hard. Like that's what our generation's
Can't
going through.
believe
How
I've
did
gotta
we
work
make
Saturday.
day-to-day life
Yeah.
so stressful
Yeah.
that we can't function at society?
it speaks to when you've been around an environment where life is not valued and you escape that environment, you have incredible value for the life you get.
Feed your kitties, people.
Yeah.
Feed your kitties.
They will not live on Amazon packages alone, we've learned.
Yeah.
It's not just to sleep for 4 days. Hey, and appreciate every generation, man. The old, the young, they all
Absolutely.
have something to offer.
You're all here for a reason.
Let's work together and
Make it
appreciate
better.
each other and
Yep.
the differences.
Feed your
between them.
kitties.
Absolutely.
I did. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks, man.
Thank you, guys.
We would like to thank you for listening to the Feral Minds podcast. Hopefully we triggered some curiosity that will have you seeking more. Remember, your mind is meant to run. Slap some sneakers on that bad boy and take it around the block. If you'd like to connect with us or enlist our feral thoughts on a problem in your life, visit us on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, or at theferalminds.com. Also remember, our thought line is always available. 24/7, we don't even allow it to sleep. and we want to hear from you. That number is 866-340-3394. Again, that number is 866-340-3394. We look forward to hearing from you.